So I have given this analogy a couple of times, but it applies here. If you imagine that you have been born blind and you've never been able to have sight, there are certain things that will be more difficult for you to perceptualize or to conceive. Things like measuring distance purely by sight. It'll be hard for you to perceive what color is if you have never seen color in your life. It's also hard for you to perceive things like height of a structure. If someone says to you that building is 12 stories high, it'll be very hard for you to perceive what does 12 stories mean unless you actually walk up the 12 stories. There's a lot of things conceptually that's hard for you to understand if you were born blind. Now imagine if one day, after a lifetime of being blind, you had sight. In that one day, think of the clarity you would have of the world around you. Suddenly you understand what height is. You understand what a 12-story building really means without having to travel the stories by stairs. You understand what colors are. You understand what it means to have a blue sky or to have a bird flying in the sky. You've never seen a bird flying above before. You've never seen a rainbow. All these things suddenly make sense in a different way, in a whole new way, and it's nothing like what you had imagined in your own mind. And it could be that you had imagined them better, but it could be that it's more beautiful than you imagined. But whichever way, it's nothing like what you had imagined. But what happens, though, is that even if you were to go back to be blind again, if you lost that vision and you went back to being blind, the way that you navigate the world would be forever altered. You would perceive the world differently, see it differently. Your decisions would change. The way you navigate the world would change. You can't unsee what you saw. Now here's the thing, everything you saw was right here, surrounding you. So what I'm trying to say is, in other words, the other world is right here, surrounding you. But just because you can't perceive it with your 5 senses doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Now imagine if you were in a world where everybody around you was blind. Everybody grew up blind. Sight didn't exist. And if sight didn't exist, all of you would perceive the world very differently. Now imagine if in that world, a few people, a handful, a percentage, 1%, 2% of the people had sight, and 98% did not have sight. Those 2% or 3% or whatever it is would perceive the world very, very differently. And they would navigate the world differently because they have sight. But the whole time, the other 90-something% would be telling them that, no, you're wrong, it's your imagination. And that 90-something%, because they're the majority, they would be creating a world that is created by blind people, for blind people, and that handful of people would constantly be being questioned or being put into doubt for being able to perceive the world differently because another sense has kicked in. Which allows them to perceive something more that for the other people do not exist. A few people who had sight, who were trying to explain to them that actually this exists, and they were trying to describe it. And the people around them who didn't have sight were thinking they were explaining something of another world, of a far-off land, while they're saying, no, it's right here. But it's just that you need another perception, another sense to kick in before you can see it. In this case, the sense of sight. In our case, the sixth sense or the sense of intuition. This is why I say that we are actually 6 sensory beings who have been programmed and conditioned to live in a 5 sensory world created by people who believe we are 5 sensory beings.